Hello, this is a screencast for my activism project on evaluating student activism and art on campus. So this is a different dimension, kind of looking at activists in motion. What is organizing at UCSB and Isla Vista? So we're going to go ahead and look at this relationship between how we as individuals and collectives express ourselves through art and how that translates into progressive activism and organizing and helps us grow. So, the first thing I wanted to do is actually have this quote by Frida Kahlo, who is really well known for her activism and her organizing as a Latina and also her art. Pain, pleasure, and death are no more than a process for existence. The revolutionary struggle in this process is a doorway open to intelligence. And I think that's so important just in looking at the next few pieces of art we're going to look at, just evaluating that these are processes we engage in, and that in itself is revolutionary, and struggling through that process is how we learn and how we grow. So I think that's super important to learn. Yeah, the first piece we're going to look at, and let me go ahead and widen up this screen here a bit. We're going to go ahead and look at this piece. So the original is actually by Norman Rockwell. It's a painting that he did in 1963 in oil on canvas, and it's called The Problem We Live With. And this was actually about Ruby Bridges, who was the first black student to go to an all-white integrated school after Brown v. Board. And what's significant about this is it's in the MCC meeting room. There's a giant chalkboard, so this is actually done completely in chalk. So the original is oil on canvas, this is chalk. And the story that Norman Rockwell wanted to depict was this little girl being escorted into an all-white school. And I think then the artist who was commissioned to do this by the MCC, Delphine Louis Ayana, she wanted to really draw attention with the chalk to the yellow armbands that the Deputy U.S. Marshal has, as well as the badges. And her envisioning of this, and as well as the MCC's reason for wanting to have this in the lounge in the meeting room, is this is where a lot of organizing happens on campus. A lot of student organizations use this room, and they meant for this room to be a wall of empowerment, kind of looking at how the emphasis is not on the men necessarily. I mean, well, you can see the stark contrast of the deputies and the U.S. Marshals armbands. The focus is on her, and I think that that's so important, especially if we're going to be evaluating this as a kind of portrait of empowerment for students. So I think that that's one way of looking at art on campus, and I know the Black Student Union meets a lot in the meeting room, and this was something that they really enjoyed seeing, and something I really enjoy seeing as well. The next artist we're looking at is Fabiana Rodriguez. She is a celebrated printmaker and digital artist based in Oakland, California. She's really well known for working on issues such as global community, interdependence, and imaginative migration, and she does this by using high contrast colors and using that contrasting with vivid figures to reflect literal and imaginative migration. Whether her subjects are immigrant day laborers in the U.S. or mothers of disappeared women in Juarez, she really focuses on bringing new audiences into the old art world by refocusing the cultural lens. And so this fist actually has some of her art, the butterfly, as well as these abstract images of women of color. So she's really well known and really helpful to organizers here on campus. This is a poster from when she was actually here working on community art with a bunch of queer Latina organizers on campus. She did queer art and a community mural, as well as Migration is Beautiful silk screening workshop. So I'm going to focus on the Migration is Beautiful silk screening workshop. So the next picture we're going to look at is her working on these from her Instagram, or her Twitter actually, her discussing working with students here at UCSB, and essentially what the screen printing butterfly means, what that is she's really trying to denote with the butterfly that migration is natural and migration is beautiful, since butterflies migrate, and within the butterflies, the design, you can see that there's faces. So here you can see that there's a face, and here you can see that there's a face. So really engaging with students, and kind of helping express in a different way. Um, and she has like a lot of symbols. She likes to use these kinds of really vibrant symbols, such as the butterfly. She also really likes to use vivid faces, and lots of color to really help show, her vision, and the importance of a changing U.S. metropolis and a new diaspora in the arts, and how globalization and immigration and social movements really start to transcend and kind of transform themselves, from previous work and like previous artists. So I like to contrast her with Frida Kahlo in a lot of ways, because of their different approaches to how they view their identities. And definitely I think Frida Kahlo did a lot of self-portraits, and Faviana likes to do a lot of kind of more external, kind of more abstract art. So I think that's really interesting. And so many, so students created a community art mural with her help, as well as hung these beautiful butterfly screen prints on campus and in the MCC. The last piece I want to talk about is this piece it's called God Hates Breeders. And it was actually made by a student, so I wanted to kind of do several different pieces of art. And I think that, to showcase some art by a student is really important. So this was made April 2014, so last month. And it was made by artist Chris Buck. He's a second-year sociology major, and he's involved in Career Commission and lots of organizing on campus. And I asked him why he made the piece. And he said, I made this piece to bring attention to how visibly homophobia can be displayed in our society, and to show that it is something that affects queer people from the beginning of our existence. And I was trying to ask, like, so what are you trying to convey with this? Because this was actually a sign used in a protest as well. And he said, this piece is a play on the Westboro Baptist Church's God Hates Fags sign. It follows the same color scheme as the signs that they use, and I simply replaced fags with breeders. It was a part of a presentation where I gave a sermon condemning my Art 7A class to hell for being heteros. I was hoping to express how heavily influential bigotry and homophobia can be in the socialization of queer people. So for this artist, it was very clear that this is really personal expression of their activism and their organizing, and what they're involved with, and the issues they tend to work on. So I think that was a really interesting perspective, considering the last two artists we looked at kind of were responses and support for activism and kind of initiation of activism, but this is really something where you see it's active, it's present. And I asked what ended up happening with this piece. Was it used? Was it not? And he said, the most interesting part of this piece was actually walking to class holding the sign. I received endless stares and people muttering under their breath, but no one actually came up to me and said anything. It really showed how few people are actually willing to stick up for oppressed communities. So again, just commentary from the artist that I think is super relevant, and kind of connecting it back to, how activism starts at UCSB and in Isla Vista. It's really grassroots, it's really organic, and it's really focused on kind of building communities and building connections. And I think that that's really clear, especially in light of Friday evening and the memorial wall that went up, as well as the different memorial services and activities that have been put on by activists and organizers on campus and in Isla Vista. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for listening to my screencast showing the different pieces of art that is related to activism here at UCSB, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the thing links and the timelines. Thank you.